Chances are you've all had used the Windows operating system. That is because Microsoft's Windows operating system is the most popular desktop OS in the world. According to netmarketshare.com, Microsoft holds 87.97% of desktop OS market, from which Windows 10 alone holds 53.74%. But apart from its popularity, it has some major drawbacks in terms of security, piracy, cost, software updates, and many more. Now, if you are looking for a reliability for using Office-based network or storing data and an alternative to Windows, let me introduce you to Linux. Linux is an open-source operating system based on UNIX created in 1991. It has a number of distributions, or distros in short, out of which Linux Mint is one of the most popular, elegant, easy-to-use, up-to-date, and comfortable Linux desktop distributions. I'm Rishad Karim Navid. Today I will be comparing Linux Mint with Windows 10 in various sectors and justify the reasons why Linux is better. Number 1. Open source nature. What is it like when you buy a car but you cannot see what's under the hood? Similar is the case with when you use a Windows-powered system, because its source code isn't available for the user to examine. One of Linux's unique traits is that it's open source. That means that its code is publicly available so that other people can look at, edit, or contribute to it. That way, anybody with a bit of know-how can adopt a Linux to suit their needs and can then share their new version with the world. This makes the latest Linux OS code very flexible and malleable in the right hands. It can perform differently depending on how it's programmed. Beyond that, you can find versions with both quite similar and dramatically different UIs than that of Windows. Number 2. Secure. Windows OS is vulnerable to different types of attacks or hacks. However, Linux is not as vulnerable as Windows. It sure isn't invulnerable, but it is also more secure. It is just the way Linux works that makes it a secure operating system. Overall, the process of package management, the concept of repositories, and a couple more features makes it possible for Linux to be more secure and up-to-date than Windows. When you have Windows installed, you need to download or purge an antivirus program to keep your computer safe from hackers and malwares. However, Linux does not require the use of such antivirus programs. Of course, a couple of software tools still exist to help you keep your system free from threats, but it is often unnecessary when you have a Linux system. Being secure by nature would make things easier and save money as well, because it's not essential to get a premier antivirus software. The major explanation for why Linux is deemed safer than most OSs is simply due to how small its market influence is. Windows takes over 75% of desktop OS global market share, while Apple's XOS has a significantly lower but still impactful share, 12%. Enjoying the most share of the desktop market, these two are far more exposed to cyber threats and malwares just because of how widespread they are. Because not so many users downloads Linux, which is about 1%, it makes it far less likely to receive as much unwanted attention from hackers to make malwares for it. Number 3. Free to use. At the time we purchase a new laptop or desktop, we need to buy an operating system. As the money spent to buy Windows is a lot, many tends to get a pirated version of Windows. Whereas Linux is accessible to the public for free. You will not have to pay $100 to $250 USD to get your hands on a genuine copy of Linux Mint. It is entirely free. In terms of running Linux Mint in an Office network, the cost can be significantly reduced while setting up this network, as there are no issues about licensing fee for the OS for each individual devices. Besides that, it is very easy to use and the installation storage file is also very compact. As a result, unlike Windows, it occupies less space in your hard drive. It also has its genuine Office suite. It's free but very useful. Number 4. App Store. Linux has collaborated with many useful softwares that are very handy. Although App Store already existed in Android and iOS and similar concepts has been developed in PCBSD at the time, Linux Mint was one of the first distributions to introduce a software manager, and that manager started to show its age. It needed attention, and so a huge amount of work went into revamping it, making it look more modern and polishing it to give a better user experience. The software manager is also much lighter and faster. App launches almost immediate. Linux armed with easy-to-use package managers which aid in installing and uninstalling desired software applications. Linux is armed with decent desktop themes certainly run faster than Windows. Just like iOS, app installation requires password for user security. Under the hood, the code of System Manager was simplified and modernized using the latest techniques used by the developing team. Linux Mint also has an alternative to Microsoft Office Suite. It has LibreOffice or OpenOffice, which is free and pre-installed, and Microsoft Office files such as Doc, DocX, XLSX, etc. are compatible with it. It has similar work interface as Microsoft Office and a lot new features. As its native file format to save documents for all of its application, LibreOffice uses the Open Document format for Office applications, ODF or Open Document. But if you want Microsoft Office Suite on Mint, you can install the 2010 version, and latest versions will neither be active or be compatible. However, LibreOffice was downloaded approximately 7.5 million times, and many Microsoft Office users transferred to LibreOffice just for its fluidity. Number 5. Compatibility. As the operating system evolves, so do their hardware requirements increases exponentially. For instance, if you purchase a genuine copy of Windows 10, you will have to meet the minimum hardware requirements to run it successfully, and you cannot run it on just about any low-end system. Linux systems are known for consuming fewer system resources. Hardware vendors already realized the popularity of Linux and started making Linux-compliant hardwares and drives. When running the OS on older hardware, Windows is slower. Nevertheless, with Linux, you could even utilize one of your oldest computer systems to achieve a task. However, that does not mean that every Linux distribution would work with 256 MB of RAM coupled with an outdated processor. There are options which you can install on such low-end systems as well. So being an efficient OS, Linux distributions can be fitted to a range of systems, low-end or high-end. In contrast, Windows operating system has a higher hardware requirement. Overall, even if you compare high-end Linux system and a high-end Windows-powered system, the Linux distribution would take the edge. Well, that is the reason most of the servers across the world prefer to run on Linux than that on a Windows hosting environment. When undergoing a software update or installing or uninstalling software on the system, generally it does not require a machine reboot. Most of the system configuration changes can be done while the system is up. As a result, one can continue his work while the system is updating. Number 6. Updates. Developers of Linux Mint or any Linux distros are much active and release major and minor updates from time to time. The updates take more like a few minutes, downloading less than 200 MB. As a result, its update files aren't huge and doesn't require more time to download, and rebooting the whole system while updating isn't required, as I mentioned earlier. Also, there's no need to uninstall and reinstall broken software or drives. Linux updates itself. And Mint updates won't remove your apps. Updates are very important for safety and security purposes. However, it is up to the user to set time to update the system, whereas Windows chose when to install updates and it force reboots the computer. As a user, it should be up to you when to install updates. These were the major causes why Linux Mint is preferable to many users and is growing exponentially. For its flexibility, familiarity, and hands-on approach that will help you get to understand Linux, Linux Mint is likely a better option for many users transitioning from one of the major operating systems, such as Windows. That said, Windows is also an excellent operating system and widely popular with 1 million apps compatible with it. If you are a Windows user but want to try other free OS like Linux, I would suggest you to try out Linux Mint. My name is Rashad Karim Navid. Thank you for watching this video.